The air was thick with the hum of conversations and the rustling of papers as the auction continued. Mary stood at the back, her heart still racing, her thoughts in disarray. The horse, the one she had so desperately wanted, had been sold, and the weight of that loss pressed down on her like a heavy stone. She felt hollow, as if the last thread of her hope had snapped, but she refused to leave. There had to be something, anything, that would give her another chance. The crowd was thinning now, some people already on their way out, their successful bids clutched tightly in their hands, others laughing as they made small talk. Mary couldn't bring herself to join them. She remained where she was, her eyes never leaving the auctioneer, who was preparing to bring out the next set of horses. Suddenly, there was a tap on her shoulder. Startled, she turned to find a man standing behind her. He was tall, wearing a faded denim jacket and a cowboy hat that seemed to have seen better days. His face was weathered, lined with age and experience, but his eyes, those eyes held a quiet intensity, as if he had seen things that most people couldn't even imagine. "You look like you could use a drink," he said, his voice rough but kind. Mary blinked in surprise. "I'm sorry I don't." "It's not a question, ma'am," he interrupted gently. "I know what it's like to stand there, watching something slip away. You've got a fire in you, but I reckon you've also got your limits." Her chest tightened. "I don't know what you mean," she said quietly, but the words felt hollow even to her own ears. He gave her a knowing look, one that suggested he had been in her shoes before. "I saw you when that mare went. You wanted her. I could see it. More than just a horse, though. You wanted a way out, a reason to keep going." Mary looked away, unable to meet his gaze. His words hit too close to home. She had been dreaming for so long, but now all that was left was the bitter taste of defeat. The man didn't seem bothered by her silence. He took a step closer, his presence calm and unthreatening. "Name's Hank. You've been through a lot, haven't you?" Mary nodded slowly, her throat tightening. It had been so long since anyone had asked her that. Really asked. Not just the casual sympathy from people who didn't understand. "I lost my farm," she said, her voice cracking. "My husband, too. The debts, they piled up. I tried everything. I thought maybe if I could just get back on a horse, something would change." Hank nodded again, his face softening. "I get it. But life don't hand you a solution just 'cause you want it. You gotta fight for it." His words weren't harsh, but there was a weight to them, a truth she couldn't ignore. Mary felt a lump form in her throat. She had fought, and still, nothing had changed. She had lost everything. "Well, I don't have much left to fight with," she muttered, almost to herself. Hank's eyes sharpened. "You think that horse is your last chance?" Mary blinked, startled by the intensity in his gaze. "What do you mean?" He gave a small smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "The mare, she's just an animal. She might be special, but she's not the answer. The answer's in you. You've still got something left to give, even if you don't know it yet." The words were a punch to her gut, but they also struck something deep within her. She was tired of pretending she was fine, tired of trying to convince herself that it was over. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't all gone. Hank paused, then gestured toward the exit. "Come on. I'll buy you that drink. You don't have to go through this alone." Mary hesitated. She didn't know why she trusted him, but something about him made her feel as though, for once, someone understood. She nodded, allowing him to lead her outside. The cool evening air hit her like a splash of cold water, snapping her out of the fog that had clouded her mind. They walked in silence for a moment, the only sound the crunch of gravel beneath their boots. Hank didn't hurry, though. His pace was steady, patient, as if he was waiting for her to find the words she needed. Finally, Mary spoke. "I don't know what to do now. The mare's gone, and I have nothing left. No money, no farm, no hope." She swallowed hard, the words tasting bitter as they left her mouth. Hank stopped in his tracks and turned to face her, his gaze unflinching. "You still got something left, don't you? A reason to keep fighting? Or have you really given up?" Mary felt a tightness in her chest. Had she given up? She had been running on empty for so long, but now, standing in front of him, something stirred within her. The idea that maybe she wasn't done yet, it felt impossible. But also, just maybe, it was true. "I don't know," she whispered. Hank didn't say anything for a long moment, then spoke in a low voice. "There's a place, not far from here. A ranch. They take in horses that don't have a chance. Horses like that mare, wild, untamed. If you really want her, I can help you." Mary's heart skipped a beat. "You're telling me there's still a chance?" Hank's smile was slow, almost sad. "There's always a chance. But it's not about the horse. It's about what you're willing to do to make it happen. You willing to fight for it?" She nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. She couldn't give up, not like this. Not after everything. They walked in silence for a few more minutes until they reached a small, run-down bar at the edge of town. It wasn't much to look at, but it had the kind of quiet that made Mary feel like she could breathe again. Hank opened the door for her and followed her inside. The place was nearly empty, save for a few old men nursing their drinks at the bar. They sat at a table by the window, and Hank motioned for the bartender to bring them a couple of drinks. As he waited, he looked at Mary with an expression that was hard to read, but there was something in it, a flicker of understanding. "I've been where you are," he said after a long pause. "It's hard to keep going when the world feels like it's against you. But you're still here, ain't you?" Mary looked out the window, watching the last light of day slip away, and for the first time in a long while, she felt something other than despair. She felt possibility. "I don't know how, but I'm going to do this," she said softly, more to herself than to Hank. "I'm going to make this work." Hank raised his glass to her. "That's the spirit, and you've got me to help you." The drink was strong, its warmth spreading through her chest, but it was more than just alcohol. It was the first time in months that Mary felt something other than the cold weight of failure. It was the spark she needed. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. She stood up, feeling more determined than ever. "Let's do it," she said, her voice steady. "Let's get that horse." Hank nodded, his eyes gleaming with approval. "You're on the right track, Mary. Let's see where this ride takes us." As they walked back out into the night, Mary's heart felt lighter than it had in years. There was a long road ahead, and it wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in a long while, she felt ready to walk it. Mary stood in the shadow of the auction house, the late afternoon sun casting long, uncertain shadows on the dusty ground. She pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders, the rough fabric scratching against her thin skin. Her frail hands clutched a crumpled envelope, worn and weathered from countless days of clinging to her as she journeyed across miles of farmland and small towns, just hoping for something, anything, that would give her a reason to keep moving. But now, standing in front of this auction house, it was more than just hope. It was a dream she couldn't let go. The sound of horses whinnying echoed from within, followed by the shuffling of boots, the murmur of voices, and the sharp commands of the auctioneer. The building before her seemed enormous, imposing even, as if the world inside was one she didn't belong to. Yet Mary had to be there. She had no choice. Inside, the auctioneer's voice rang out, cutting through the noise like a whip. "Next up, a fine mare, purebred, strong and young. Who will give me a starting bid?" Her heart pounded in her chest. She pushed open the doors with shaking hands, stepping inside. The air was thick with the scent of hay and dust, the horses' restless movements and their snorts filling the space. She moved carefully through the crowd, trying not to draw attention to herself, but she was painfully aware of how out of place she felt. The other bidders were neatly dressed, their clothes expensive, their faces confident, their eyes gleaming with the anticipation of a deal to be made. Mary, however, was dressed in layers of worn clothes that looked as though they had seen years of service, her face drawn and tired from the hardships that had followed her ever since she'd lost her husband and her farm. She found a spot at the back of the crowd and stood there, watching as the auctioneer's gavel slammed down for another horse, another sale, another price far beyond what she could afford. The mare she had seen earlier, the one she had fallen in love with the moment she laid eyes on it, was now circling the ring. A stunning animal, chestnut coat gleaming under the bright lights, its mane flowing with each movement, its muscles rippling. The auctioneer called out once more, "Who'll take her home? Who will make her theirs? Mary could hardly breathe. It wasn't just the beauty of the horse. It was the way the creature moved, the grace and strength in every step. This was no ordinary animal. This was the kind of horse she had ridden when she was young, the kind of horse that had carried her through years of good times, before the world had turned its back on her, before the illness took her husband, before the debts consumed everything she had worked for. This horse, with its gentle eyes and proud stance, reminded her of everything she had lost. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. Her heart raced. She knew she couldn't afford it. She barely had enough money to feed herself, but she couldn't help herself. She raised her hand, trembling. The auctioneer caught sight of her and paused. "Ah, we have a bid. Number 42. Will you go higher, ladies and gentlemen?" A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. Mary felt the heat of their gazes on her, but she refused to look down. This horse meant something to her. It wasn't just about having something to ride again. It was about reclaiming a piece of herself that had been buried under years of loss. The bidding continued. Higher, higher. Each bid pushed the price beyond what Mary could even imagine. She felt a lump form in her throat. She had nothing, not enough to even be in the game. Yet still, she stood there, clutching the envelope like it might give her the answer. The auctioneer's voice rang out again, fast and sharp, as the bids flew back and forth. 75,000. 76. 77. Do I hear 78? His eyes flicked briefly to Mary, then moved on. Her heart sank, but she couldn't let go. She stepped forward, a movement so small it barely registered in the eyes of those around her. She had no money, nothing but the sheer desperation that had driven her here. She was ready to speak, ready to beg for a chance, but the auctioneer's eyes moved past her. He didn't acknowledge her. Instead, he turned to another bidder, a man dressed in a suit that was too expensive for this dusty place. 78,000. The gavel fell. The deal was done. The crowd's applause echoed in her ears, but Mary didn't hear it. She couldn't. She was still staring at the horse, now being led away, its proud head held high as though it knew it had been won by someone who could afford it, someone who had the right to own it. She was nothing like that person. She had nothing. And yet, as she watched the horse disappear into the hands of a wealthy stranger, she felt a surge of anger rise within her. Anger at the world, at the unfairness of it all. But more than that, it was a sorrow so deep it felt like it would swallow her whole. Without thinking, she stepped forward again. "Please," she said, her voice cracking. "Please, can I have a chance to buy her? I'll do whatever it takes. Please." The room went silent. The auctioneer, now turning to face her fully, raised an eyebrow, his lips curling into something between a sneer and a smirk. "A chance? You don't have anything to offer, old woman," he said, his voice dismissive. But Mary's desperation pushed her forward, her hands now trembling as she lifted the envelope and opened it to show him. There were a few crumpled bills inside. Not much. A few $100s, the last of her savings, but she had hoped it might be enough to show she was serious. "Please," she repeated, the word almost a plea, as if this was the last time she'd ever have the chance to make a difference. "I just need this horse. I can work. I can pay you back, please." The auctioneer looked her over with cold eyes. The laughter from the crowd had died down, but the discomfort of the moment hung thick in the air. A few people exchanged glances, and one man muttered something to his neighbor. Mary felt her cheeks burn, but she didn't back down. "I don't have enough," she whispered to herself, but then, louder, she repeated, "I don't have enough, but I can work. I'll do anything." The auctioneer scoffed, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You think someone's going to give you a horse for free? This isn't some charity event, lady." The crowd murmured, a few people shaking their heads in disbelief. Mary stood there, defeated in a way she hadn't been in years. She had fought so hard to make it this far, and yet, in the end, she had nothing. No money, no horse, no hope. But something changed in that moment. Something deep within her shifted. She wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. The auctioneer turned away, but Mary remained in the same spot, standing tall. She might not have the money, but she had one thing left, the will to fight for what she believed in. She stepped aside, her heart still pounding, her mind swirling with thoughts of what to do next. The auction continued around her, but in that moment, Mary knew she wasn't done yet. She would find a way. Somehow, she would make it work. The gavel rang again, and the auction carried on, but Mary's journey had only just begun. The sun had barely begun to rise when Mary arrived at the ranch. She could barely make out the silhouette of the sprawling buildings in the dim light, but she could already sense the quiet hum of activity within. The promise of something new, something possible, stirred deep within her. It was a feeling she had not allowed herself to embrace for years, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, she could start over. Hank had insisted on arriving early. "If you're going to do this, do it right," he had said the night before. "The ranch is not a place for second guesses." Now, standing at the edge of the ranch's dusty driveway, Mary was unsure whether she was ready for the kind of challenge Hank was referring to. She had been in fights before, literal and metaphorical, and had the scars to prove it. But this felt different. This wasn't about saving a piece of land or trying to keep her family's legacy intact. This was about a horse, one single animal, and what it meant to her. She could feel her breath quicken as Hank led her toward a large barn near the back of the ranch. The smell of hay and manure filled the air, mixed with the earthy scent of the rising day. A few horses whinnied in the distance, and she saw their silhouettes pacing in their pens. Her stomach twisted with a combination of excitement and dread. She didn't know if she could handle it. Hank stopped in front of the barn door and turned to her. "This is where we'll start. It's not going to be easy, but if you want that mare, you're going to have to prove you're worth it." Mary nodded, her hands clammy against the straps of her worn bag. She had come this far. There was no turning back now. She followed Hank inside the barn, where the light filtered through gaps in the wooden beams, casting a warm glow over the rows of horses. "Come on, let's go meet the others," Hank said, his voice softer now. He led her through the narrow aisle between the stables, the sound of hooves echoing off the walls. The horses watched them, some curious, others indifferent, but all of them alert. Finally, they stopped in front of a stall at the far end of the barn. Mary's heart skipped a beat when she saw the mare. She was unlike anything Mary had ever seen. Her coat was a deep, almost iridescent brown, and her eyes were dark and intelligent, but there was something wild in them too. The mare shifted nervously, snorting, clearly wary of the new faces. Mary felt her pulse race. There was no doubt in her mind that this was the horse she had been dreaming of. "You think she'll trust you?" Hank asked, his voice low, but not unkind. Mary swallowed hard. She had no idea. The mare was clearly afraid, but there was something in her eyes, something that told Mary that they were connected in some unspoken way. "I hope so," Mary said softly. Hank gave her a knowing look, then turned to the stall door. "You'll have to prove yourself to her. Horses can sense fear, and they can tell when you're not sure of yourself. You'll have to be patient, but firm. You can't rush this." Mary nodded again, her heart pounding in her chest. She had no experience with wild horses, no training beyond a few dusty old books and some childhood memories of her father teaching her the basics. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was this moment. Hank stepped back, his eyes studying her. "I'll be here, but I'm not going to hold your hand. If you want this, you're going to have to do the work." Mary stepped forward, her breath steady, but her hands trembling slightly. The mare watched her closely, her ears flicking nervously as Mary moved closer. She could feel the weight of the animal's gaze, its intelligence, its awareness. She stopped a few feet away, allowing the space between them to remain. The last thing she wanted to do was push the mare too far too quickly. The silence stretched on. The mare huffed, her nostrils flaring, but Mary didn't move. She kept her gaze steady, trying to project calm, though inside, she was a whirl of uncertainty. She had always been able to read people, but animals? She had never felt a connection to anything like this before. But now here it was. The challenge. The hope. "I'm not going to hurt you," Mary murmured, her voice barely more than a whisper. She didn't know if the mare could understand her, but it didn't matter. She needed to believe it herself. "I just want to help you." For a long moment, the mare didn't move. She simply stood there, her head lowered slightly, her eyes locked on Mary's. And then, slowly, the mare took a step forward. Just one, but it was enough. Enough for Mary to know that there was hope. She swallowed, her pulse quickening. "Okay," she whispered to herself. "We can do this." She reached her hand out, keeping it open and low. The mare watched the movement carefully, but didn't flinch. Mary held her breath, waiting, but the mare took another step, her hooves striking the ground with a soft thud. The moment was delicate, fragile. It could have gone wrong at any second, but Mary knew she couldn't let fear control her. She was here for a reason, and she wasn't going to back down now. With another slow, measured step, the mare was close enough for Mary to touch her. Hesitating just a moment longer, she let her hand fall gently on the horse's neck. The mare flinched, her muscles tightening, but she didn't pull away. Mary could feel the heat of the animal's body beneath her palm, the soft movement of the mare's breathing. "Good girl," Mary murmured, not sure if the mare understood the words, but hoping that the tone would convey the meaning. "Good girl." For what felt like an eternity, nothing happened. The barn was still. The horses in the nearby stalls had grown quiet. All that mattered was this connection, this fragile bond between human and animal. And then, the mare nickered softly, a quiet sound that sent a jolt of hope through Mary. "You're okay," Mary whispered, her hand now gently stroking the mare's neck. "You're going to be okay." Hank's voice came from behind her, soft but approving. "You've made progress. But that's just the beginning." Mary turned to look at him, feeling a surge of gratitude for his quiet support. "How do I keep going?" Hank nodded toward the mare. "You keep doing what you're doing. Trust her, and she'll trust you. You've got the hard part figured out. Just don't give up now." Mary felt a sense of calm settle over her. She had made the first step, and though it had been small, it was a step in the right direction. There was still a long road ahead, but for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to take it. The mare shifted again, her head turning slightly, and Mary gently stroked her neck once more, letting the warmth of the connection settle deep into her heart. "I'm not going to give up," Mary whispered. "Not this time." And with that, she knew. Whatever came next, she was ready to face it. With the mare by her side, she had found a purpose again, a reason to keep fighting. And no matter what, she wouldn't let go. Not this time. Not ever.